Good morning, everybody. I'm Susan Howard, a domestic violence attorney here in Brookline, and this is The Safety Net, Brookline Interactive Group's show dedicated to educating and raising awareness on domestic violence. October is the Domestic Violence Month, and for that reason, we have District Attorney Michael Morrissey with us today, and Beth McLaughlin, supervisor in the domestic violence area in Norfolk County. District Attorney Morrissey, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Do you think we'll ever see the end to this? You mentioned before the show that there was a murder in Kingston, a domestic violence murder in Kingston last night. Do you think this is ever going to abate or end?
I don't know that it's ever going to end. I think that we can do the best we can to educate people and try to reduce the situations where someone ends up losing their life or ends up being physically injured. We think that these are the most dangerous cases that we handle in the district attorney's office because human nature is so fragile and people often have a lot of serious problems, and a lot of the problems end up, before the court with partners or spouses, and it's tough. I mean, I don't know that we get nervous in the sense that we're taking a chance on what someone may or may not do, especially whether or not they get bailed or what the restrictions are on a person. And a judge is in the same boat, that we try to work with defense attorneys and keep victims safe. But I know that our share of cases that we have in this office on murders, we only get 8 to 12 murders a year. And probably 30-40% of those involve family members of some kind. Sometimes it's like a parent and a child, but a high percentage of them are spouses or partners who've been living together. And it's very unfortunate. And we saw the results, probably the most serious result that happens in those situations down in Kingston. Now, I don't know whether there had been any court involvement before that. It appears there's been some talk about a potential divorce, and you just don't know what sets people off. But, even if there had been court involvement, sometimes I don't know how you stop someone and keep them safe. And we work as hard as we can to get that message out and to show people where they can go, where they can get help, how they keep themselves safe, and just try to work with defense attorneys to hopefully to help them educate their own client. And you don't want to be going down this path with us. It's not going to end up. And I know you've said in the past about how some people get incarcerated, that makes them even more angry. We're not looking necessarily, I tell people, we want to get the right result. And that right result is that protect the victim first and get the perpetrator some help. If that's possible, then they pursue that. If it isn't possible, it could end up in
Right.
So
I think that Norfolk County has a very, very broad, holistic, inclusive approach. That's what I found. And that you're willing to try new avenues to keep the victim safe and get the help for the perpetrator. It's up to the defense attorney, I think, to be really convincing to the perpetrators, listen, take the help, or this is going to be following you the rest of your life.
Well, the other one is if you have a plan for the perpetrator, if you're representing the perpetrator in a case, and you have a solid plan, we're all ears, I think.
Right, yes.
We don't corner the market on good ideas. I mean, we listen. I mean, I don't want to insult you, but you've been around a couple of years doing this stuff. So you have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of contacts. That's important. I mean, Beth has 15 years in, but some of the other people you're dealing with don't, and we recognize that too. But, if we all work together, I like to think we can get the right answer.
So I was asking, do you want to add anything to what District Attorney Morrissey said as far as whether or not we're ever going to see even just a little abatement in all of this? And I also want to ask both of you, I think yesterday or the day before was Mental Health Day, World Mental Health Day.
Yesterday.
How much we're hearing a lot about mental health and the crisis in mental health for everybody, and there aren't enough staff, and there aren't enough beds, and people are in emergency wards. How much is that contributing to what's going on in the domestic violence world?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to see domestic violence end based on everything that's going on in the world. But what we can do is get resources for people who need them. And I do think, mental health can affect a situation that involves domestic violence, there are also a lot of other things that affect. It's not just one thing that causes somebody to hurt their partner. We have substance abuse issues, we have the family violence, we have mental health issues. And I think the biggest part is to treat it as a whole and to get the services that we can get for all of these individuals. We need to perform a balancing act when we're dealing with these situations. We have to look at the victims of domestic violence, and we need to weigh what they want against what they need. And a lot of times it's just about educating them and getting them the services they need. And it's the same thing with the perpetrators of domestic violence. We work really hard with a lot of different groups in order to keep information open and to get people the services that they really need, whether it's a certified batterers program or it is mental health treatment and following all of those recommendations, or it's substance abuse treatment. So we're trying to treat it as a whole so that we can sort of chip away at it and get more awareness and get more resources for the people who really need it, both the victims and the perpetrators.
Boy, that's a unique approach. This DA's office is probably the only one in the state that I know of that also considers the perpetrators. As a defense attorney, I do both. I represent victims and perpetrators, and one of my biggest concerns is we don't have enough resources for perpetrators. And quite frankly, I don't know what those resources should be.
Well, one of the things we see a lot of, especially these days, people with substance abuse, whether it's drug or alcohol, and that obviously that fits into so many different categories in this office. But it I think also heavily weighs on the domestic side of the house. And you often find people that have a substance abuse problem also have a mental health problem, and there's a high percentage of people that have both problems. And I don't know which comes first, you know what I mean, whether they had mental health problems that led them to drugs and alcohol or vice versa. But we do have, we're one of the few counties that has, we have a drug court, a veterans court, mental health court, and we actually have in Quincy, because it's a large enough body of work, we have a domestic violence session on Fridays in Quincy District Court. So that's something that the judges who work there, the DAs who work there, and a lot of the people like yourself, defense attorneys, kind of know their stuff. And we try to get the resources together in one room at the same time, so that, I like to say, we like to keep the victims safe, and make sure we have a good safety plan in place. And we use a lot of different organizations, Jane Doe, Dove, and others to work with us sometimes, but make sure they're safe. And as Beth said, our primary job is, I think, towards the victims. We don't remember that this is usually a family problem or a relationship problem. So we also try to work with the defense attorneys. But it's a very, it's a tightrope, because these cases can blow up very quickly. And so I know that if there's going to be criticism over of any of the district attorneys and how they handle it, this is the area in the body of cases that are the most dangerous for anybody to handle, because of the unknown, the direction they can take. So you try to be reasonable in your approach to get the safety and the help that the victim needs, and to work with people like you on the defense side to make sure that their clients are going the right direction too. Because if they're not, we're going to end up with a crash in the middle, and that crash can be violent, as we saw in Kingston this weekend. So it's just something that we do pay.
It's a tightrope, isn't it, District Attorney Moore? You're walking a tightrope.
Well, we also try a lot of those cases too. That's the other thing. I like to, say someone like Beth. I think some of my better trial attorneys in this office are actually the attorneys who do the family violence, domestic violence, sexual assault cases. These are usually cases that don't easily go away and end up being tried. So, they've had some really good attorneys have come before Beth. A number of them are sitting on the bench. You were a good friend of Jean Marie Carroll. She's a really good attorney, and she kind of cut her teeth on the domestic violence side of the house. Michelle Armour, she's now sitting as a judge down in Attleboro. She cut her teeth in the same way. And I honestly think that they try more cases, they have more experience, and they're dealing with an element of human nature that you often don't find in some of the other cases that we find, especially in the superior court level. So it's my hat's off to the people. That's one of the reasons why we have a whole specialized unit, because they try to get specialized training, try to give them some more resources where we can, and try to make sure we maintain those contacts with people outside of the office that really can help us.
What do you think about incarcerating the perpetrators? Do you think that that works? Is that, does that stop them or does it make them? I found in my practice that my clients that are jailed, the perpetrators, they become really, really angry and they become very, very retaliatory and nasty, not just to the victim, but to everybody in their universe.
Well,
And I don't know what
that
we can do
includes you
about that.
too. That I assume
Yeah.
that includes the defense
Yeah.
attorney. And Beth can probably speak to more experience. All I will say is there are some people who do very bad things who are going to get incarcerated, and I can't help that. But it's a long way from 0 to 60, if you know what I mean. There's
Right.
there's usually a long path that's flowed. That's why one of the criticisms I think that I've heard of the office, and I know Beth can help me address it, is a lot of people have kind of like buyer's remorse. There's a blow up, they end up in a situation, they end up in the court, and it's, you know, human nature being what it is, and then people are feeling, oh, geez, bad that we got in this situation. We generally take a slow approach to these problems. We want to make sure that everybody is going in the right direction. They're all rowing in if it's the same or separate directions, that the calm the waters a little and make sure people are safe. And so even though someone may come up and say, you know, geez, I want to drop the case against my husband or against my partner, that may not happen in the first instance. And one of the reasons we get a little bit nervous that some of the judges are kind of quick to just clear the docket and, you know, dismiss these cases. And that does happen to us. And you know, that's their prerogative. But, you know, we also try to work with them to get them attuned to the fact that, hey, take a deep breath, you know, stick with us a little longer. Let's just make sure we're not in the business of trying to give people criminal records unnecessarily. But if the matter stays before the court, it's much quicker to get back into court and to, you know, to do what has to be done, that you have to start all over again. And sometimes that may keep the waters a little cooler. If we're not pushing the case and people don't feel that burden on them, then that may allow for dialogue to occur between the parties and a resolution that makes sense to you as a defense attorney and to us as prosecutors can work out. If it starts going the wrong direction, then we'll probably start moving, you know, towards prosecution.
You know, DA Morrissey, the defense bar has the same problem. And when I give the options to a victim and they say, I'm not going to go to court, I'm not going to testify, and they are in serious danger at home, I'm going to go home, he pays for my kids this and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to do. I'm not going to force anybody to go to court. I give them the options, but my heart is in my mouth. And I do say, you know, it's very dangerous for you to return home, but it's your decision. I'm not sure it is. And I always walk out of that session with the client. Oh my goodness, am I going to read about this in the Globe or the Herald tomorrow?
Well, they read about you and Beth and I, you know what I mean? We're in the same boat. And that's why
we are.
I think it's important to work with the defense community, you know, and especially people even representing victims, but that's obviously our primary job. But, you know, if you want the right outcome, you don't want anybody hurt. But sometimes you can't read that, you know what I mean? You don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Exactly.
And so, but we're not quick to dismiss stuff. That's a criticism that I've heard of the office, and there's a rationale behind it. And the rationale is, again, just to make sure that you know, we have had a chance to have some dialogue and we know that people aren't going to try to hurt each other. And those are the cases that are troublesome to us. I mean,
DA Morrissey, in 30 years, I've been working in Norfolk County, and since you've been DA, I have always found your office to be unbelievably fair. Unbelievably fair. More fair than I would be if I were in your office. Seriously.
Well, it doesn't mean that we're right. It just means that.
But you try. You're trying.
We do try to do the right
Yeah.
thing, and you know, it's not always about prosecution either. And I always tell,
Right.
and I think Beth is a good example, that she tried some very serious cases. She knows the cases to try, and she knows the cases to resolve, and that's, you know, why she's the supervisor of the district court, because of that mentality, that experience, and knowledge. I mean, it's hard to get, you know, people who have that kind of experience. That's why she's with me today. She knows a lot more about this than I do, I can tell you that. So I have some good people that I listen to. So
Beth, weigh in on that. When a victim doesn't want to testify, give your advice to a defense attorney. What do I do? Do I force them? Do I pressure them? I don't.
We do not ever force a victim to go forward. It's our job to look at the case and figure out a way that we can prove it without the victim if we have to. So we go into court, we file excited utterance motions. Sometimes there are, domestic violence is usually something that happens behind closed doors, but sometimes we do have percipient witnesses that we would call to testify. Generally, we do not force a victim of domestic violence to testify against her perpetrator if she does not want to. But we do try to give her the resources that she needs. We also try to figure out a way to resolve the case so that she stays safe and that the case can continue on. So even if a victim does not want to testify, it does not mean that the case is going to end. We do our best to figure out a way to prove that case with or without the victim so that we can get the perpetrator the services that he needs and keep the victim safe, because that's our number one priority, is the safety of the victims.
Right.
And the leverage you have over a defendant sometimes to force them into counseling or other things, if it stays in the court, you get a little bit more leverage sometimes to try to push them in the right direction too. We're not looking to prosecute them. I mean, you can cooperate with us and their attorney, and you can move in the right direction. And that says a lot to us. And you're willing to take a chance on someone like that who, is trying to do the right thing and doing some meaningful education, counseling, help, assistance that will, either allow the relationship to continue, or if it falling apart, to fall apart in a amicable manner. And so, but there are times, as Beth said, that, we don't like to make, and I'm not aware of, I won't say that we haven't done it, but I'm not aware that there's been a time where we forced the victim to testify. We just don't do that. And how can you, if they're that reluctant a witness? It's just, their testimony is not worth much anyway, especially, you don't know whether it's
Exactly.
going to be people. And so we just don't do it. But there are times when you get someone on the phone yelling out, stop hitting me, and saying stuff on the phone that's all recorded in the police station. Well, if she's, really hurt and fear, and we have some of those, well, you might find us, moving ahead in a case like that. But that doesn't also mean we may move ahead, but it may not, at the end of the day, it might not be a quote prosecution. It may be moving through the process. And there's a lot of steps until you finally get, to the point of a trial that people can help themselves. And we try to push people to help themselves.
Wow, that's really a unique approach. That's not true in other counties, T.A. Morrissey, I can tell you from experience. Push to trial. Let's get it done. Let's get him put away. That's basically in a county north of here. That's basically the attitude. And
Beth took over recently as the supervisor, and she was noticing, she went and talked to all the different attorneys. Now, that's one of the other things. She can tell you a little bit about the makeup of the office of how we have it. She went to the district courts and saw what was going on, and she saw that some judges appeared to be a little quick on the draw to just want to clear the docket. That did not sit well with her, and obviously it was relayed to me. And so we're trying to talk to some of the members of the judiciary and said, hey, there's no backlog in these cases. Maybe a little bit more time will serve us all well. And so we're working on that. But again, at the end of the day, it's the judge's call too.
I'm glad you did that, Beth, because the defense bar was looking at doing that, of having court watchers, because some of the judges post-COVID, and I understand the COVID pressure and the backup. I certainly understand that. But some of the judges just sort of poof, 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 just move it along, and they don't listen. And the clients complain to the defense attorneys. He or she made up his mind before you even opened your mouth. Why did I hire you? This is the kind of pushback that we're getting. And what do I say? I say, I understand your concern, but I'm just as concerned. So, Beth, I'm really glad that you did that. And I hope the judges listen to you, because they will get a reputation, at least among the defense bar, that is one they may not want.
Well, I'm not sure they want a reputation amongst the prosecutors either, which is why we're all in this together. And if we don't work together, Quincy, that's why they have the special domestic session. Now, Quincy's just big enough that that it can pull it off. And that's one of the things that I'll let Beth tell you a little bit about the makeup of the people who do some of the domestic violence work in the courts. You might as well tell what the traveling DV and specialized.
I think we're lucky in Norfolk County that we can have specialized prosecutors for domestic violence. So in Quincy, we have 2 designated domestic violence prosecutors. They only handle the domestic violence cases. So they start with them at arraignment and they follow them all the way through to
That's
trial.
great.
Nobody else touches the cases. It's just these prosecutors, unless, of course, somebody is stepping in for a day or two. But generally, it's a great way to get to know the case, to get to know the victim, and to see exactly what that case needs and what we need to do to make sure that the victims are safe. And I started in that role 15 years ago in Quincy doing the domestic violence prosecutions. And then I worked my way up. We have a designated sexual assault position as well in Quincy. There's also a roving sexual assault prosecutor that goes to all of the various courts, and they're the person that handles the sexual assault cases in each of the district courts. So we are very lucky here in Norfolk County that we do have designated prosecutors that are akin to this type of work, are used to dealing with the victims and dealing with the same judges and the defense bar on these types of cases. So it is very unique.
We try to take some of the more experience and the various supervisors in the district courts, because we have obviously Brookline is its own court, and Stoughton and Rentham and Quincy and Dedham in the district court, one superior court, of course, in Dedham. But we try to have a more experienced person who would be the supervisor in the district court, who would also work, with like Lisa and Beth and my first assistant when necessary, because they're identifying cases that have to be indicted. But also, a lot of those people have had a stint, either as the roving sexual assault, or we have tried to encourage everybody to take a 3 or 6 month stint as a DV prosecutor. And so I think some of the attorneys really want to learn that side of the law. I mean, I try to encourage them that you're probably going to get more trials handling those cases, and they will also make you a better attorney, I believe. So some of those people also can handle that. But if there's a problem, I'm not telling you we have the right or the wrong approach. I think we have an approach that seems to work. And so if someone sees something, let's say in Brookline or Dedham, and they think they have the right answer, usually they'll touch base with Beth and say, this is what I have. These people are X or Y, and we've seen them on a regular basis. This doesn't appear to be what, as bad as you may read, and they'll pass it on to Beth. They'll talk about it. And if Beth's uncomfortable or has a recommendation, and she'll make it, and we'll move on with a plan. Or grab Lisa and they'll sit down with the attorneys and try to come up with what the alternatives are. So more than one person should be looking at it. At the end of the day, the person has to make a decision. But we're not the swiftest either. I mean, some of the stuff requires questions of bail right away. Those decisions we do make relatively quick, but the longer range, complicated planning on how to handle the case, we take the time and do that.
I think it's terrific, and I do think it's working, DA Morrissey, from my experience. In the few minutes we have left, what advice would you give to defense attorneys going forward? Seriously, I'm looking for some help here.
Well, I'd like to put you out of business. That'd be the best part. He said that was the first thing we could do. But Beth put together some statistics, just so you know that even in Brookline, you're not immune to domestic situations. And there have been 76 restraining orders or harassment prevention order this year alone. There was 110 in 2021, and 92 were filed for 2020. Now, obviously, we felt bad during COVID that the courts were open, and we handled that. We had a lot of remote stuff going on, which was not the same, didn't give the same feeling. And a lot of people were kind of cooped up in situations that probably weren't healthy for relationships. But I don't know that we saw a lot more restraining orders happening during that period of time. But I think what we saw was a lot more serious situations happening.
Whoa, interesting.
So the defense, I guess, attorney, and Beth can comment too, I would just tell you to try to work with us, we'll work with you. And if you have, if your client is doing the right thing and you recognize what the right thing is, and then I think you get a better result from us. You get a better response from us. If you have a client who is resistant to some of the proposals we're making, we're going to we're gonna be butting heads. It's just, that's the nature of the,
More often than not, that's the case, DA. I didn't do anything. It's not me, it's them, blah, 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 blah. And that's in private quarters. That's what I hear all the time.
that
You're
goes back to-
blaming me.
Well, that goes back to your first question. Are we ever gonna see the end of this? And I think you heard from Beth and I is we'd like to see the end of it, but
Oh, sure.
it's just.
I'd like to be put out of business.
Right, human nature as what it is, I think is always gonna be work, and we just hope that work doesn't rise to the level where people are physically hurt or killed.
Right.
And
DA Morrissey, thank you so much for appearing during this month, and I look forward to seeing you in Brookline on Thursday. Beth, it's good to meet you. I'm shocked that I haven't met you during your 15
Yeah, you're
years,
lucky, Beth.
but thank you for the work that you do. District Attorney Michael Morrissey, a very unique approach to domestic violence. We're very lucky. I'm very lucky to practice in Norfolk County, and quite frankly, I'm not really taking cases out of Norfolk County because I get slammed. I'm going to be
Yeah.
really honest. The DA, the assistant DAs and the
Well,
district courts
yeah,
have no
it's not me,
authority.
It's Beth and the other assistants. I mean,
Well,
I
thank
just,
you.
yeah, it's.
I
they're
know
good
somebody
people.
has some authority and can make some decisions in other counties. They have no authority. You can sit in the court from 8:30 till 4:30 before they reach a supervisor, seriously, for a tiny little question. And that's, that just raises it. So I'm so grateful that I practice in Norfolk County. Thank you for being with us, DA Morrissey. You're going to come back. You're going to come
Yeah,
back
I
because
know,
we're going
yeah,
to call
yeah,
you back.
yeah. All right, Susan, it's a pleasure to be here, and then just have people, I know that domestic violence occurs year round, but this is the month in which we try to educate people, and I should have wore a purple tie, but I'm so ingrained with orange, but I will have a purple tie on Thursday.
Okay.
So-
Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.